Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the New Hampshire Business Show. My name is Chris Pastrana, and today we are with...
Gail Kraft,
There we
the
go.
powering process.
Ladies first, right? And I'm Steve Spain.
All right, perfect. So we're here today. It's a little rainy out. We moved our setup a little bit. We're running a little late because of me. It's my fault. I take blame for that. Just while we're here, I'm going to shout out Gail's book. I was reading it a little bit earlier, and felt like you could actually see it since we're always talking about it. So,
Right.
Cool. So let's get started today. Sponsor for the podcast is Everlasting Capital. So if you are a business that needs money, which is one of the main constraints of most businesses, check out Everlasting Capital. They are a business that helps fund small businesses through means that aren't a bank. So it makes it much easier and outside of your traditional lending regulations to get money. So they sponsor the New Hampshire Business Show, as you've seen in the past. And so we are shouting them out again today, so we can try to do what we do and make more money.
Money. Love
Cool.
money.
So so let's get rolling. Our goal for today is to talk about, again, businesses. And as we were talking about, because I rage quit my day job, well, kind of day job this weekend. And so I had the idea of let's talk about what makes a good business and what makes a bad business. Because we're always talking about business, and we know a good business and a bad business when we see one, but it almost feels like it's subjective. So let's get a little bit into what we actually think makes a business good and bad.
And what our experiences have been.
Correct. That is also, I think subjectively, that's going to be a very good idea of what makes
that's
a
not
business.
subjective. That's very objective.
It depends on who you are. Some people absolutely love working for businesses that I would think would be awful.
That's true.
You know, because working for someone like Steve Jobs, who was notorious for being just, like I explained with my other boss that I quit from this weekend, probably a very similar type of person, and I would never work for that. I would consider that a bad company, but some people love that.
Right.
So, it's good. I guess we'll go.
And so speaking of that, so one of the things that I did was, well, if we're going to talk about good businesses versus bad business, my favorite book, okay, so here's a shout out, Simon Sinek, love him, but this is not about why. He came out with a book last year called The Infinite Game. And I could not put that book down. And it really is about companies that have an infinite mindset versus the finite mindset. And so just like briefly, if a company has a finite mindset, they're looking at the quarterly results, they're looking at this month's sales, they're looking at very short-term objectives. Whereas if they have an infinite perspective, right, they're looking way down the future, and typically an infinite perspective is a goal that cannot be reached, but it's a worthy goal to go for. So one of the things that I put down here when we talk about the infinite perspective, one of the elements of an infinite perspective is having a just cause, right? So it's the cause, not a vision. There's a difference, right? Most companies have visions, and so we want to talk about companies that are a bad company to work for. Would be a company that does not really align with your own values, your own vision, right? So we talk about values. Many companies will have their values on the wall. Isn't that just fantastic? But you want to see, are they living their values? Most of them are not. These are the values that people will want to come and work for, but it's really not the way that they behave. Correct. So if you end up in a company like that, run as fast as you can before you get fired, because you're not in alignment, right? And you're not going to be happy, and you're not going to perform at your top because the values do not align with who you are. Now, many of those companies, there are people who do align with those values, the values that they display, right? And that's fine if that's who you are. That's my thing as a coach. Is like, who are you? What's your values? What's important to you? That's where we need to go, not where I want to go. That's where you need to go, right? So we need to do that kind of discovery.
I think there's a lot of dynamics here. I mean, the first thing, why does the business exist? You know, some people start a business because they think they can make money.
Right.
The business has to make money. It has to be able to pay its employees, pay its contractors. So there has to be a fundamental business solution, either the product or service that they're making. So that's the first part. And some of those things people are in alignment with the actual delivery of the business itself.
Right.
It could be a janitorial company they could not be in alignment with cleaning toilets and such, but they could have incredible relations of how they take care of their employees and empower them, and they're there for them. So I feel like there's dynamics of first the business itself and having passion for that, and you could really love saving the environment, but you have a horrible boss.
Oh my God. So yes.
Right? So there's like two parts here. People love the vision of the company, but the culture, the way that the HR structure, the benefit, all of that could be just completely off, and you're miserable that way. Or, you're getting great pay. So it all comes back to values, right? Your sacrifice is you either want to make a lot of money, so you work for this company that pillages the world, and that's what you want to do, or you have the other piece. So it's interesting that you're pulling in a lot of different dynamics of, what makes a good business, but there's the business side, and then there's like the employment side.
Well, there's so many flavors. I worked for a company, and when I put out this slogan, those on the West Coast will know who I'm talking about, but it's a Thrive. They had a Thrive campaign, right? It's all about, we want you to thrive. And my staff would come to me and say, but they don't want us to thrive, right? They want, our members to thrive, but not us, right? And so the second element, quite frankly, and you brought this up, of an infinite business is a trusting team. Now, that means those of you bosses who are micromanagers, that you don't trust your team. So that means, how can you possibly have a trusting team? So let me give you an example of myself. I worked for a company, fantastic pay, fantastic benefits, had a blast, but my boss micromanaged me. And he used to say to me, you're too involved in the day-to-day details. You need to pull yourself out. Yet he was involved in my day-to-day details, right? And I had no idea how to pull myself out. This was the first job as a leader that I had. So the next job that I had, my boss came up to me and he says, did you hire your team? I said, yes, I hired my team. Do you trust your team? Absolutely trust my team. So I'll tell you what, if you don't let them do the work, I'm taking your computer away from you, because we don't know if we need help if you're doing the work. And if you're doing their work, I got stuff you need to do that you're not doing. And take my computer away from me. But I learned how to delegate. I learned to trust my team, right? I learned so much from that mentor. That was the best mentor ever. So my team ended up trusting me because I trusted them.
Reciprocated.
Right?
So that's another interesting layer of this. So you have, good, bad businesses, good, bad employees, good, bad customer relations. So there's a lot of like puzzle pieces being involved here. So yeah, we can keep going on all of these. I think that'll be much longer than an hour conversation, because we can go about this all day. So just talk about what you had said. So a lot of people, especially nowadays, they listen to the Gary V's, they listen to the Grant Cardones, and they romanticize what entrepreneurship is. And I think this creates a very interesting dynamic in business, because you get a lot of people jumping into business who shouldn't be there. And I understand side hustles. We had this conversation online the other day. So there's a difference between me printing shirts, my entrepreneur shirt if anyone wants it.
Which is a side hustle.
Yeah, side hustle. Correct. It's me working for myself, doing my gig. So there's customer services involved. But it's not a top-down business that you would see that I want the co-work to become. Right? So there's a little bit of difference there. So let's say take the co-work. Say we had 100 employees. How do you manage those people? How do you go about setting up the processes properly? How do you do all these things? So I said there's a lot of levels of what looks good, what looks bad. And what do you think
So businesses change as they scale too. So the examples you give, so for instance, I essentially have 5 or 6 side hustles, and that's how I live, right? When you are the owner operator and you're serving your clients is a lot different than now you go up another level and you train other people to replace what you're doing. They're probably not going to train. You're going to try to set up the systems and processes for them to train your clients the way that you did, but it's going to lose a little bit of it, right? They're still their own people, the employees or consultants, whoever you plug in place. And you see that with companies like Amazon. When I was in college, the only thing you could get from Amazon was books.
Right.
it's changed a little bit.
Yeah,
Since
just a
then.
little.
And there's dynamics there, right? Because Amazon, their clients, they have clients and customers, right? They have clients who are selling on their platform. They're just a platform, a marketplace where people are selling. I've sold stuff on Amazon, and I personally, and we spoke about this last time, it's not exactly the best experience.
No.
If I was a part of a company that we started that we sold wireless routers that filter the internet, so that way kids couldn't get into like bad content, so you'd buy one of our routers and then you'd plug it in. But if any customer had any issues setting it up, Amazon just instantly issues the return and then just destroys our router, which was kind of expensive. You know, it's not like just a cheap little plastic thing. It was a wireless router. So for them, they're serving their customers, the people buying from them, and for them, it's just issue the refund right away. Amazon could be a whole separate podcast in itself, but I guess this is the example of where they started from, were smaller, and now they have to have rules and processes in place because they're serving so many people.
Right. They don't have time to discern.
Right.
Right. Whether or not you're a vendor for them that is fully reputable, though they do vet their vendors thoroughly.
Right.
Right. They really do vet their vendors. But, it's just easier. It's just easier. My brother used to work for Costco. He did jewelry repair. Well, they didn't repair the jewelry. They just replaced whatever. And whether you bought, like if you brought a watch in, if you bought the watch from them or not, they didn't care. They took it, threw it in the back, replaced it, because it's way easier than to actually repair.
Yeah, and just to plug Brandon real quick, since he's in the
Hey,
comments.
Brandon.
Hey, Brandon.
We're talking about business waste, which is kind of his thing, so kind of throw that in there. Sorry,
Right there.
sorry to derail that.
No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So one of the other elements of the infinite game, if you will, is the worthy rival. And I love this perspective. I had to read that chapter a couple of times because there is a difference between a competitor and a worthy rival. A competitor is hunt, kill, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to put you under, get you out of my way. A worthy rival is, holy crap, look what you're doing. That's fantastic. Don't want to do that. I'm going to continue down this path. Or, whoa, I'm going to leverage what you're doing. I like where you're going, right? And vice versa. So it's a respect for each other. It's a respect for the opponent, if you will, versus the fear. It's really not fear driven. Whereas I think if you're a competitor, there's a sense of fear.
And there's different approaches to it too. So we've brought up Amazon and Costco, who are two very successful companies and retailers, but their business models couldn't be any more different. If you, I read that actually just for fun a few years ago. It was just the Costco business model.
Yeah,
they purely don't really live off making money off their products, which kind of doesn't make much sense, right? But it's the memberships. Because they take care of the people who buy from them so well and their employees so well, they can make different decisions in how they treat people because they're not living off of trying to sell the products to survive. They already have that fixed. It's like an annuity. It just keeps coming in from the memberships. When you have monthly recurring revenue coming in already, you can make different decisions than if all right, this quarter I have to sell this much to survive. There's different stressors that gets put on the employees. So I find that kind of interesting. And every business model, again, structured differently. You can treat people differently. There's different stress that's eliminated because of decisions. I heard the company Aldi, a smaller grocery store.
Right.
I believe they're a German company, and they're really expanding throughout New Hampshire, but throughout the country. I think they have a real aggressive plan where they want to be one of the biggest grocers in our country. They said something along the lines of they've made 1,000 decisions to result in our price being the way they are. There's the way the company structure, the square footage, the size, the SKUs they have in the stores. Right. And it's two sides. It's those business decisions that affect the employee-employer relationships and those dynamics.
Right, exactly. I will tell you that, at least from my brother's perspective, he owned his own business his entire life. And so when he ended up working for Costco, it was by accident, and he loved it because he had the freedom. Now, they don't do this now, so we're talking a few years ago, but he applied for a job there. He was in California, and they said, yep, I'm going to bring you on. And he said, well, my daughter's getting married, so, in a month or so, I'm going to have to take off and go back to New England for, a month or so. So I don't think I want to start. And they said, yeah, that's okay. Take off. So they brought him on, and he came back, did the wedding, and went back. And about a month or so later, he goes, yeah, I'm going to quit. And they're like, well, why? He says, you don't have enough work to keep me busy, and I'm pretty bored. And they said, so come in 3 days a week. Hello? Hello? So he went in when the workload warranted him to be there. Think about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Holy crap. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
It's a weird dynamic. Just kind of going on what you're talking about. Some businesses are not like that. I tried working for Walmart, right? So I used to work for Walmart before I was in the military. It's very stringent on you're going to be here at these times, blah,
Right.
blah. Like they're definitely not very nice about their scheduling. Now, could that be anecdotal for the location? Yes, of course, right? But especially in this economy with everything going on right now, there's a very interesting breakdown of how you treat your employees per business, if that makes sense. So do you treat them well? Do you treat them not well? How nice do you treat them without them walking out the door and just going somewhere else anyway? Because they're still not going to treat you pretty well most of the time. You're still going to get bad employees, you're just going to get all these things. So at what point do you decide how you want to manage those employees, right?
And what are they doing? It's sometimes, I've been a part of my background and skill set. I've worked different sales jobs, and there's different types of sales. There's inbound sales, there's outbound sales, there's cold calling, and I find that the tougher the type of sales, the more benefits and the more cushion, the more things they offer to kind of make it better to be there, because they had to do those things, because it's not exactly glorious work. Some people don't. I mean, some are wired for this. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Some love it. I don't. I love working with people. I love having these types of conversations. When I'm talking with someone, great. I'm probably better suited towards inbound sales versus you're going to make 100 calls a day. You're going to get hung up on 80 times. You got to try to keep people on the phone. You're kind of going back and forth. Like that type of work, there's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of people, and the sayings, you're killing what you eat, right? So in order to make your money, you have to earn your commission, you have to make your sale, and that type of lifestyle, I found at least, those companies, they had a lot of other perks and stuff to kind of keep those people happy, because those are the top line people that brings on sales for the company, and they can't, every company has some different dynamic of it. Companies like HubSpot and content creation in terms of inbound pulling sales as opposed to the outbound push trying to attract them have adopted different models, but at the end of the day you still have to talk with people. No matter all the technology and websites and systems, this still has to happen. You still have to have relationships and talk with people to build long term and profitable for both sides. You're solving a problem, the profit kind of follows the solutions, so it is interesting that way.
It really, really is. So, you were taking a look. Anything from Brendan out there?
Oh yeah, he's been blowing up the comments.
Oh, I know. So what's he got
he's
to
doing
say?
his thing. He's commenting as we go. So he's
Okay.
talking about Aldi, and then I mentioned Walmart. He's talking about how terrible it is, and all these things. So Brendan's doing his thing in the comments. And I've got you, buddy. I'm liking your comments as you go. So thanks for being here.
He's gonna have to join us one day.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely get him here at some point. He comes down every couple of months for a day or so.
We'll do an odd one.
Yeah, it was here at the drive, so just kind of a thing you can see behind Steve over here. We got a bunch of electronics. So we did our e-waste drive the other day. As you can see, we got a bunch of stuff. So now we're going through the process of cataloging it and doing all that stuff. So thank you for everyone that came in, and for anyone who didn't come in. We are a permanent drop-off site, so come down anytime you want and leave stuff. We are going to be having another drive. I'm not sure when. I was going to do late November, but I'm really worried about snow.
Yeah.
So
We might want
I might wait
spring.
until spring. We'll see what happens, and we'll make a judgment from there. But but you can always come in anytime and drop off, and I will gladly take care of it, and we'll take care of that e-waste, because we were talking about that earlier. So
one of the things that we should probably touch on is being a good employee versus not a good employee, and having been both a boss who had good and bad employees, and being a good and bad employee, Right? I've been there, and so sorry, guys. I've made mistakes. I know it's hard to believe, but I have. Good thing is I've learned from them, and there's a reason why an employee is a bad employee. We kind of talked about this a little bit before we were on, and that is when you're not the right fit, right? And one of the motivators that typically keeps an employee in a job that they are miserable at and that they're not performing at their best is money. Money and fear, right? So fear that, well, who's going to hire me now, or who's going to hire me at this price range now. The first managerial job I had was in a union, and I came up through the ranks and then stepped out of the union into managerial. Now you can imagine there were people who were senior to me in the union but didn't have the balls to step out of the union that now are reporting to me.
Yeah. Well, we're also talking about, like, again, what you were talking about earlier with commission jobs. You know, they're difficult, and these are also the jobs that pay very well too, as well, right?
Right.
So without a college degree and without a lot of this stuff, you can get into sales and make a lot of money.
Right.
On the flip side, you have to be willing to do what a lot of people won't do: cold calling, prospecting, that type of stuff that you were talking about, that some people just don't like. 100% commission sales.
Right.
You know, if you don't sell, you don't make any money.
Right.
So it's stressful. There's a lot of work there. I used to sell used cars, so I've lived the dream until I started the podcast.
Right. But you also worked weekends.
Correct.
Right, and
Worked
so
everything,
family life gets disrupted.
Absolutely. Especially in sales, like I said, if you're not working, you don't make any money.
Right,
So-
and what if you're a traveling salesperson? You know, you're going around the world maybe.
Yeah.
Right, while your spouse is raising the kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
There's a few things there. So I mean, employees. So there's this book. So everyone, I'm sure you guys have read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Of course.
So there's the concept of the cash flow quadrant that comes up in that book, and he's actually done a secondary book on that, just purely on the cash flow quadrant, which is really interesting. And one of the things that he said in that book that kind of stuck with me is employees tend to value security, so I fear that salary, those benefits,
Right.
where entrepreneurs tend to value freedom,
Right.
and going after that. And I felt that completely. I was not happy being an employee. When I had just that one job I had to do every single day, I found myself being more interested talking with the owners about the culture and the direction of the company and why we're doing things, and I was more into that type of stuff. And then I would like doing the marketing one day, and then, you know, so I naturally was an entrepreneur, and I
Right.
just, fitting me into that, it was like this wild animal trying to domesticate them or something. And that's so I found happiness being self-employed. Now, with that said, a lot of people leave being employed because they don't have a good relationship with their boss. So they leave and then they go start a business. Well, guess what? Now the business is the boss.
Right.
You know, it doesn't. The boss does not care if it's 10 at night and something. If your website's down, you have to get your business back up. You know, you're living off sales now. You don't have that cushion, that fixed salary that's coming in. So there's that. It's the wearing the different hats that you have to do. And so the cash flow quadrant is the top left is employees. You go down, you're self-employed. So I do a few things that are self-employed where I have to do it myself. I have to go do the service in order to do it. Again, you probably have a better client owner-operator relationship versus the other two are investments. You're just putting money into a property. You're putting money into the equities. You're getting a return. That's the most passive. The one that I personally like best and where you're trying to get to is just owning businesses. Now, owning a business is different than self-employed. A business is a system that runs itself, that you have employees or contractors in place. It's automated, it's systemized. You've done the years of work to build this thing, and now it's just your ATM. It just
Ching-ching.
brings the money in, right? Now,
Ching.
easier said than done, very glorified,
Oversimplified,
yeah,
too,
you know,
yeah.
simplified. Anybody can do it, and there's a lot of burnout, and you might have 40 or 50 failures. You know, there's stories of the guy who founded KFC, right?
Yeah.
And he did it in his 60s, and you know, you hear these stories all the time, and it's
Because
very
he didn't give up.
right.
He
and
didn't,
it's that
and that's just
persistence.
it. He just didn't give up.
Right.
Right? So one of the things about building a system, you know, and you had mentioned it before and I wrote it down, and it's called the Law of Diminishing Returns. And so, you know, so you start a business and you are the system.
Right.
Right. And so you write your procedures down because you now want to hire somebody. When you hire somebody, they're not going to be 100% you.
Right.
Right? They might be 80% you, but they're not going to be 100% you. And when you hire the next person, they're going to be 80% of that 80%.
Right.
Right. It's a fractal. It continues to go down. And so the trick is to manage that. So you need to become a manager. And many entrepreneurs cannot do that transition. Right? They really, or they can't do it for long.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a book I always think of this process exactly described to a T, and I mentioned to you last week, is the E-Myth. It's written in 1986. There's all these, so you start with the core E-Myth, which is really, that's Michael Gerber, and he's a small business consultant, and he basically teaches small business owners how to systemize their business like a McDonald's or a Starbucks. You can take anybody off the street, plug them into your system. These are the principles. These are how we do things, and they can do it. And you start at the bottom. You know, you have your cashiers, whoever might be the front facing, and then you as a small business owner, you start at the bottom because that's where you are, and then you become the manager. You have someone below you, so now you have a whole new system and principles of how to be a manager at this company. Now you train your manager, and then you keep kind of working your way up until you own the system.
Right.
Much easier said than done, but that book, any small business owner, when you read it, you wish you read it 10 years earlier, because it's like, I did that wrong, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, right? So yeah, entirely. And it changes, it pivots, it moves.
Pivots.
Your clients' technology could wipe out an entire business model. I mean, you're seeing Sears and all these companies that are around for 100 years
Disappearing.
I don't see any Sears anymore. I'm sad because I worked at Sears for a while and I missed. I had a lot of fun at Sears selling tractors and lawnmowers and all that stuff. But
yeah, so it's something interesting. Kind of what you guys are talking about is, I think especially right now in culture and what you kind of see in mainstream culture and everything, there's a big disconnect between entry level and CEO, right? And it always has been. It's much more pronounced now that you see this a lot in culture, like raise minimum wage, tax the rich type stuff, right? Where they think, why are these people making $200,000, $300,000 or whatever a year when the entry level people are making minimum wage, right? Or no, probably not actually minimum wage, but whatever.
So much less.
A lot less, right? And again, you hit on it. Like, not that the business is your ATM, but there is a drastic change from the entry level to the top level. And there's drastic change in skill sets. And I think this goes back to, I'm always harping on college and education because I hate it. It's stupid. It's inadequate. It's old. So what we learned in school.
It's a business.
Correct. So it is a business.
Okay.
I will give it that. Universities are a business and they like to make money, right? And the governments leverage that how they do. We'll get into that some other day. Actually, that would probably be a really good interview to have another week, is about universities and being businesses. But like the way we teach kids and the way we teach people who are younger directly conflicts with what it takes to become Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg. As much as I don't like these people politically, they've built massive organizations that if I could do that with a coworker, I would do that with a coworker, right? So in time, maybe, who knows, right? But to get there is not what it takes to get that entry-level job, right?
So from my perspective, that first job that I had as a manager, I had come up through the ranks. I was working at a very highly political organization.
Yep.
Very front-facing. We were in Boston, across from the State House. Very high-end, and I became a manager. I had zero college experience.
Yeah.
All life skills.
Yeah.
I got my college degree because I found myself arguing with the CFO about how funds were being allocated. A street kid, and I'm arguing with this guy, right, about I was right, but I felt like my credibility was in question.
Correct.
And I had to defend that first before I could make my damn point.
So to throw back at you, every time she asks me why I never published my books, because I've written a few of them, that's the exact answer I give you.
Credibility,
So I don't publish my books because I want my businesses to be better before I publish the books about business.
Right? But so I ended up going to college and arguing with the professors, especially the HR. When I took the HR course, I'm out having coffee with the professor who is an HR rep, right? And I'm like, I can't believe you get paid to teach people to treat their employees, right? I mean, I can't believe you get paid to teach this. Isn't it like common sense? I don't understand, right? Ms. Gail, most of those people in that room with you don't get it. I'm like, well, you can't teach this to them.
Yeah.
He goes, no. They'll pass the test, but they're not going to change. Right? This is what I mean. This is when, well, then why are you doing this if you know that it's not going to cause any change in behavior? Oh, because college is a money-making machine.
Yeah.
Right? It has nothing really to do with skill set.
That's what's being sold, right? So
Right.
A few things that came to mind at this last dialogue is we live in a culture that's a lottery ticket culture. I just get this degree, and now everything comes to me, right? And I start a business, now I'm the CEO, and now everything success is all there, but it's not lottery ticket, it's more like a sculpture. You have to keep chipping away, and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, like you said, they grew something. It took years, decades to grow into what it is now. There's a lot of uncomfortable things that happen through that. There's a lot of things that went wrong, but they keep
Right.
chipping away. The persistence, like you said, you grow into that CEO that earns what they do. And that's what's beautiful about a business as opposed to a job to a degree, is that a business, you can accelerate the process of earning versus, you can work your way up the ladder and you can eventually become the CEO. But that CEO, he still is demanded by the board and he has to perform as well. And there's a lot of pressure at that point. Whereas a business, you can take the things that you're not good at and find someone better than
Delegate
you
it.
and delegate. And you have still the culture and the processes, but you can, bring someone in to replace the things that you're not good at. And that's a valuable thing.
Or you do, like I form affiliations and partnerships, right?
Right.
So I'll help you, you help me, let's work together. This is my weak point, this is your strong point, let's work together. In order to bolster, where my weak
Right.
points are. And it works out really well,
Right.
right?
I guess the other thing here is none of this is static. You don't just come up with a business or get a job and now you're just there and you've made it. For like 5 seconds, right?
If you realize you made it because
Right.
something's changed and you want more,
Right.
right? And you have bigger problems, right? Different problems. Let's not say bigger, but different problems.
Sometimes bigger.
Sometimes bigger. Yeah, to solve. So the struggle is real, but that's the juicy part of life, right? Is to overcome a challenge, right? And to move forward and to not stay stagnant, right? And to stay in motion and just sometimes plow through.
That's there's this book I read years ago, The Obstacle is the Way. That's
Yeah.
a Stoic philosophy, right? And it's the success of a business can also be directly correlated to the size of the problem they solve. If you solve a very large problem, someone's going to be willing to pay larger sums of money because you're solving a bigger problem. If you solve a smaller problem, you're going to maybe have quantity, and you can scale that way, but you're having a lot more customers and clients and that type of thing. But
Right.
yeah, absolutely, the obstacle is the way.
Right. And honestly, I just love what I do. I just love what I do.
Yeah.
Because I help people face their problems,
Yeah.
right? And solve their problems and to get through them. And when you're on the other side, and so there is a moment where you go, well, that wasn't such a big deal, right? It doesn't matter. The fact is that you've gone through that, obstacle, and then you see that there's another. Personal development, which is also very much what I do, is just like that, right? You may come with me and say, well, I have a self-esteem issue. Well, we all do, by the way, right? So we work on the self-esteem issue. What's the root cause? How do we, elevate your perspective on yourself? And guess what? Another problem comes up, right? Well, I also have this fear of, of crowds. Oh, really? Well, let's talk about that, right? There's always something more that comes out. So because you're getting better, your business is growing, your life is growing, you're expanding, and so your view of the world expands, and your awareness of good and the not so good also expands.
It
right?
changes. You see the world as you are, right? So it's
Right.
like what you saw 20 years ago, what might have been a pain or a problem to you isn't any longer.
Or you
So
don't even see it anymore.
Right, it's just not even on your level any longer.
Right.
At a very low level, though, I mean, we naturally as humans, I think this is like a Buddhist philosophy, we tend to avoid pain more than we seek pleasure. So if you have something that's very painful, we'll do anything we can to avoid it. It could be your mother-in-law, I don't know, but you just do whatever you can to avoid certain things, and you'll shape your entire life that way, as opposed to maybe seeking what you're really, your dream, what you're going
Right.
after. It's kind of like just like the hierarchy of needs almost too. It's like you do the highest minimum to live a basic life, and some people, I mean, we're all kind of more in the business world, but some people are completely happy just doing a good basic job. My father, he's been at the same company for almost 40 years. He doesn't love it, but he has safety, he has security. They helped. When I went to college, they had an incredible scholarship program that paid for like half my college. I mean, I couldn't be more thankful for that.
Right.
That massively shifted. I mean, one of the biggest things, and whole separate topic, but one of the biggest things for, now it's Generation Z, but, Chris and I were part of the millennial generation. We get a lot of bad rap, but one of the biggest things that affected our generation was they talk about college debt, right? And what that was. One of the biggest things they found that made it successful for our generation graduating college was our parents' ability to set us up for college with things like not having college debt. So if you could graduate with very little debt, or having the scholarship or whatever it might be in place to graduate there and kind of hit that ground running, it just, now we're seeing, I graduated in 2008, so I'm, whatever years after school now, you're seeing some that are just buying a house right now, where I was able to buy one when I was 25.
Right.
So it's a huge difference, but it all comes back to that.
So my son is kind of in that age bracket, and he just sold. He and his wife just sold their house and moved. And he goes, "Mom, I couldn't afford this house if we didn't buy it when we bought it." He said, "Right now," and they both make six figures. Both make six figures, because there's no way we could afford this house today.
And that's another piece right there in terms of just investing in markets, right? Buy assets. Assets pay for themselves, and they appreciate over time. I mean, last year the housing market went up like 20% last year. The house I bought, and this is a little different now, but I bought it for $200,000. The house next door just sold for north of 500 something. That same size house and all that, exactly what you just said, right? A lot of people probably could have bought the house at $200,000.
Right.
This is 2012, so 9 years ago. But $500,000, it's a completely different animal.
Right, you're
Same
looking
house.
at $500,000.
Right.
Right, that's
Yeah.
$500,000, guys.
So this is a funny part of the
We did
conversation.
digress.
Oh, absolutely. So, but what I like about it is good business, bad businesses. Government, bad business. Awful, awful, awful. If you actually look at it as a business, which it is, they just don't like to look at it that way. They are an awful business. So you can compare it that way.
Right.
But I like that. I like the point. I think, again, a little off topic. We'll pull it back in a second. But the idea of everyone throws this out. I see this a lot, especially in politics. Everyone's like, 50 years ago, I could put myself through school, working a job. I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. 50 years ago, you didn't have high-speed internet with all the stuff we have
Right.
going on today.
Right.
So
the technology wasn't there.
technology's different, tools are different. We're evolving at a very quick pace as a species. Technically, if you want to get into that argument. But, so things have changed so much, and we're not changing our philosophy and our views of those things.
Right, we're,
So again,
we're not evolving.
yes. So we're looking at a, problem from 50 years ago without attaching the new solutions to it.
Well,
So-
you've got that, and so many people, and even people running businesses, not having the ability to have an infinite perspective. Okay, I had a conversation last time I was on the road trip, so that was last summer, with my sister. She lives on the West Coast, and she's like, there's nothing left to invent. I said, you don't know that. How can you say that?
Of course there is.
You
So-
don't even know. You don't even know. I mean, 20 years ago, who would have thought that this phone could do everything this phone does? 10 years ago.
Absolutely. So to add to that point, think about. I always talk about graphene.
Graphene is the new thing.
Graphene was discovered in 2010-ish.
Yeah.
So you're talking about just, 12 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
11, 12 years ago. From that, you're going to have this whole industry explode out of. So there's always things
It's
to
getting
invent.
ready to change.
Correct.
Right now.
So you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
there is a universe of things we don't understand, we don't know. There is endless things that we could invent out of that. We just don't know it yet.
We just don't know it. So one of the things that I do in some of my trainings is I'll have a flip chart and I'll do a huge circle. So this is all of the knowledge, current knowledge in the universe. And then I'll put a little pencil dot in the middle. This is what you know. This is all of the so, and I usually do that at the beginning of a class. So please come with an open mind to what we're going to talk about, because all of this you don't know.
Yeah.
This you do.
There's an old saying, and I don't even know if it's that old, but essentially like how do I word it? The real. Sorry, I'm gonna mess this up. It's essentially a person who is wise understands how ignorant they are. Something on those lines. I'm totally jacking
Right.
that statement up.
Right. I
But-
don't know so much more than I do know.
Correct.
Right.
So when you actually understand how little you know about everything, it's a sign of intelligence.
Right. The more you learn, I've heard it said
Yeah.
so many different ways.
Yeah,
I heard
it
it
was
said
like, I forgot.
jokingly the other day. I was with someone and he said, "I'm 61 now. I know nothing. When I was 16, I knew everything."
Exactly.
You know, it's just
Yeah.
little
Exactly.
switches like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, entirely.
Yeah, and I think this has to do a lot with going back to what we were talking about good businesses and bad businesses, where a good manager knows how to manage people, right? He knows how to run the business, how to do all the things. A brand new business owner doesn't know that, but they don't know they need to get to that point.
Right?
So as they learn, they make a lot of mistakes. They probably burn through employees. They burn through their own sanity for a while, and eventually they figure out, oh, I need to do this thing, right? And getting to that point is that growth in the company where, again, I'm sure Amazon has all of the processes and procedures figured out about how to run their business in current society. Do we gauge it on if they do it well? Sure, I've heard awful things about these companies and
I
how
said
they run
deliver
their
well.
warehouses and
They
stuff.
do run their
right?
business well.
Absolutely. So, but is it a good business? That's a good question. Right?
That's up for questions. So one of the things we talked about, we touched on, is not knowing what changes are coming down.
Yeah.
And part of my experience working in large business is I was in change, process improvement. I'm going to find the gap and I'm going to figure out how to fix the gap. And quite frequently, the dinosaur head gets it, but by the time the tail moves, because the head told it to move, there's already a new problem. Right?
Yep.
Because the businesses don't filter down. And now one of the problems my experience has been, people frame their conversations as they move it up. So I'm, let's say, middle management, and I see a problem. So I tell my boss, and he's like, well, let's reframe that, right? Reframe it. And he tells his boss, and he's like, well, before I bring it up to my boss, let's reframe that. By the time it gets to the board of directors to make a decision, it ain't the problem, right? It's the old telephone game, right? And so how can the board of directors or senior leadership, the C office, make an informed decision when they aren't really informed?
Yeah. So this is not off topic, but some people might not understand the reference. In the Army, sometimes we have these really big formations, right? So there's this thing, I think the saying is if you're 15 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late.
Right.
So we're always about 15 minutes early to everything. So the joke is, the sergeant major will tell the first sergeant, hey, be there 15 minutes early to 6:30. And the first sergeant's like, got it. Tell the platoon sergeants 15 minutes early to 6:15.
Right.
Then the platoon sergeants to the squad leaders, hey, 15 minutes early to this. And then by the time it gets to us, we're standing in the field at 4 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
waiting for 2.5 hours for
Right.
something to happen,
Right.
when we didn't need to do that. And it kind of struck me as funny because we were talking about the head told something,
Right.
and it eventually the tail eventually figures it out.
Right.
And that's kind of how it feels sometimes, where being an employee, because I'm definitely one of those bad employees that you talked about earlier. I'm not well suited to be an employee because I just don't like it.
It depends. If you're given, so what I used to do is, here's the outcome.
Yeah.
You get there. This is the outcome.
So this is fine. So this is more on topic of what we were supposed to be talking about
Okay.
today. We kind of got
I
off a little
know.
bit, but
We
that's
knew we were
fine.
gonna
We had a
digress.
good conversation. It's fine. It's that idea of freedom. So again, I had this huge fallout with my employer this weekend, which was really funny. I was telling them the story earlier, and a lot of it from the story I told you comes from this. It's that I can do jobs where I'm left a lot of autonomy to do things myself.
Right.
So if the job is actually do this, I'm going to let you figure it out and do it. That's one thing. There's a different thing when you're told, I want you to do this, and I'm going to let you do it, and then every time you do something wrong, you do that wrong, you do that wrong, you do that wrong, you do that wrong. And I'm like, would you stop? Like, that's
Right.
bad management.
Right. Or do this. Oh no, take a right step, take a left step to the. So I'll give you an example. I'm a very good project manager. I can make anything happen. And I was in this company, and I put together this program in 6 months that apparently for 5 years they were trying to get up and running, and they couldn't. I didn't know they had that problem until I was done. So the program is up and running, and this vice president says, Gail, I would love you to run this project for me and do for me what you just did for that company, right? I'm like, for that project. I'm like, oh, cool, I can do that. Every day he's micromanaging. Let's go over the project plan. Let's go over the deliverables. You need to do a presentation. You need, right? And I'm like, but at that point this is now you running the project.
Correct.
Right.
Like, do you want...
Why did you ask me if you want to run the project? Run the project. Right.
That's a good example of the whole infinite mindset, right?
Right.
If you had been told prior to coming to that company, hey, we've been working on this project for 5 years, we can't figure it out, we can't do it, it may have affected your ability of how you did that. In your mind, you might have thinking, all right, well, maybe I can do this in 2 years. And then you anchor yourself to that versus you just came in, you're brand new, you want to solve this problem, you took what you had already known and you solved it in 6 months, right? It's different versus, if you put limits in place, people tend to fill the time that they're given.
That's the Parkinson's law.
Exactly.
Yeah, Parkinson's law.
Yeah.
You'll take the space that you're given.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then again, like, even though you're given the same problem to solve, there's different employees.
Right.
There's different structures in place that, change that thing. It's that old, for people who don't understand what I'm saying, if everyone remembers the original Jurassic Park, when he drops the water droplet and then he does it again and it rolls somewhere else. He's like, things constantly change, and you can't address some of that stuff just by saying, okay, do the same thing.
Right?
Like, well, there's other problems.
Right? The environment has changed, right? The only thing that I did, quite frankly, guys, is, it was a program that was set up that had many structures, and I saw that the project managers were doing the work and not building a structure. And I just went, well, who owns this? No, what senior person owns this? Who gives a shit? Who owns this? Who owns this? Got them together. It's like, this is your problem. Let's get together and figure out how you want to run that leg. This is yours. I just put ownership and responsibility where it belonged, so that it would run.
Right. I think we, especially now, we live in an era where you can't really set in your old ways. You can't say this is how we've always done it. Because technology is changing so fast. So we talked about the phone, right? So I think there's a saying that the first space shuttle had less computing power than our phones do.
Right.
And our phone has more power than the computer I had 10 years ago.
Right.
So it keeps changing and growing. So we have to be people who constantly change and grow and learn. You know, I mean, the operating systems on these, what we do, our cars, you're seeing people get left behind and businesses get left behind that didn't adapt and change and grow.
Right.
And that's just going to, I feel like, continue accelerating. And it's happening, to circle back to our conversation, in the workplace as well. There's a pretty massive change that happened this past year, and I think we're also still seeing that happen with this mass exodus of people leaving companies. People were home more than they've ever been. That was a massive change. I think some companies saw they could be more profitable because they could maybe cut some of the expensive real estate they had.
Right.
Others, you're having things with vaccine mandates and such where people are in person, so now people are leaving those jobs. So there's a lot of change happening that was twofold. It's the technology that's been building for a while, but it's also just the current environment. Again, that what we call it, the COVID era, I think we said last year.
What did we say? BC, before COVID,
Yeah.
during COVID, and
Yeah.
after COVID.
Yeah,
So we'll see those going on. Yeah, it's very interesting because I was one of those people in the Y2K teams, and I was dealing with people in India, right? Programmers were in India. That was the first time I remote managed people, right?
That was a big deal then, whereas it's so much more normal now, right?
Well, right after that, I was like, why do I have to come in the office?
Yeah.
Why do I even have to show up? Right? And, job after job after job, we want your butt in the chair. We want your butt in why?
Right.
This, and that was over 20 years ago. It took an epidemic for management to see, for leaders to see, well, gee, we were probably more productive. And in fact, I know for a fact, my son, in the job he had at Boeing, he was more productive at home because you don't have those interruptions that you have in the office.
Yeah, I mean, you have different interruptions.
Yes.
So I think that the big difference is, like going back to good businesses and bad businesses, is management it's easier to control people when they're at work. Yes, they're going to fill the time they
Control.
have.
That's
so it is a
not-
control. But
that's not trusting team.
correct.
Okay.
But I think there's also a reason for it. So I don't want to apply morality to any of this. So I'm just going to strictly say the points, and then we can apply morality afterwards. It's easier to control your team when they're in the building around in an environment where you're expecting them to do their job. Mm-hmm. Now, if you have people who can't self-motivate and self-direct, that's a very effective way to put them in a position where they can work.
Right.
If you have people who are capable of self-directing without having those blinders on like a horse, they can work from anywhere. But some people can't do that.
That's
because
true.
There's people who, if you send them home, you will be paying them and you will never get a product from them until you fire them.
Right.
So I think it depends on, it's a trust between managers and employees.
It's trust training, and also, you mentioned some people can't. Now, some people want to be around other people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll get to one of the other things I do has to do with knowing what your gift is and what your characteristics are
Mm-hmm.
as a being. And some people get fed, they get their energy from other people. They cannot work alone.
Yeah.
They have to be around
Yeah.
other people.
Well,
So, nothing is cut and dry. That's the whole thing.
Correct. And just again to add to your point, which I definitely agree, it's the old concept of putting on the mask. So you're going from being the father, the husband, the wife, daughter, whatever,
what archetype you're going
to
to show.
the entrepreneur. Like you
Right.
walk into your environment. That's the point of the co-working space.
Right.
You come in here to work. You can put everything aside and you have a place dedicated for that. And it can be the same for the office. You walk in and you're Gail, CEO of X company, and you're there to do your job and you do it. Where, depending on the home relationship, all that stuff, if you work from home, sometimes people have an issue slipping in and out of those roles, or they muddy them and things get weird. So I think there's good parts to all of it and there's bad parts to all of it, and then navigating that is again a good management, good business.
There's
Right,
skill
and
here, too.
it takes creativity.
I was just going to say that, talking about just production, actually getting work done.
Yeah.
There's different level of skills, right? So you could have someone who's extremely skilled, and again, I guess dynamics of a company, they could pay him salary, or they could pay him hourly. Some person can be very skilled and can finish something in 2 hours, where it might take someone the entire day, right?
That's me.
So are you going to
Yeah.
penalize this person for being very skilled and getting it done quicker? I tend to like, when I hire out anything, I like paying by the project as opposed to hourly,
Yeah.
That's what I do.
right? Because they're incentivized. If they're very skilled, I don't care if it takes them 4 hours versus the other guy takes 10 hours.
Right.
We're paying for skill, and I think we see that in the workplace as well. And back to what you said about the government. So, and what you said about what'd you call it, a what rival, a healthy rival?
No, worthy rival.
Worthy rival,
Yeah.
right? Well, the government does not have a worthy rival. They're a monopoly, right? They don't have competition. When you go to the DMV, do they have the fastest and nicest computers? Probably not. I mean, they probably get by what they have and they milk it for its full useful life and probably well past it because no one's pushing them to get better. Whereas when you have healthy competition, you improve and you get better, and that's what people in the marketplace have to do, and that's why they can be efficient. Versus just, there's the reputation of the state employee, right, that slogs away, uses all the hours of the day. Doesn't matter, the work's going to be there tomorrow.
Yep.
I have no incentive to have it done any quicker.
So, yeah, that was, when I grew up. So, and then we need to cut this off because we will go on the whole day. So I was raised, we all have mindsets that we need to overcome if we want to move forward in our life. And mine was, two things. One is I'm a woman. So, no, you're not going to college. You're just going to get married and have babies. No, you're not going to do whatever. You're just going to get married and have babies. So I was raised, I'm just supposed to get married and have babies, I guess, right? And the other was get a government job. They'll take care of you for the rest of your life, right? And neither one of those rung with who I am, right? My personality, they all seemed like scratching on a chalkboard. Just like, this doesn't sound right. This doesn't sound right. But that's how my family was raised. So it's fear. We were talking about Maslow's, hierarchy. It's like, just take care of the bottom two. Never mind. Don't try to climb to the top of self-actualization. Don't be self-actualized. Don't go there, right?
Be secure.
Be secure,
safe. Take
right?
a proven path. Go down this
Right.
way.
And all of my sisters and even my brother is like, "You doing what? Are you nuts?" Like, "Yep, I am."
That's
Right.
good. Awesome. So let's go there. We're about an hour.
Yeah.
So unless you guys want to go for another hour, but
No, we need
I
to
won't push
go.
you.
We need to
So
go. I'm supposed to be here for people coming in today.
Yeah, we have to go be productive,
correct.
right?
I know, right? Cool. So thank you everyone for watching. We'll roll through again. How does everyone find you?
I haven't set up a fancy email for this yet, so I'm just giving my personal because I don't have. There's too many of them, but just stevespain2@gmail.com if you guys want to reach me there.
So, and I'm Gail Kraft, Kraft, like the cheese, no relationship. You can find me on Facebook, Gail Kraft 77, and you can reach me through Messenger there. How's that?
Cool, perfect. Chris Pastrana, you can reach me on nhbusinessshow.com as well as Facebook, Instagram, and everywhere else that you type in NH Business Show and I show up because there's a lot of them. Also, Strike for Your Clothing. If you love my entrepreneur shirt, grab it. It's only $15. You can get it online or just message me directly.
Yes.
And next week, we were supposed to have a guest. I think he postponed it, so I will try to find someone else so we can have our first guest in the room.
That'd be fun.
And absolutely, it'll be fun. And then we'll go from there. So thank you all again, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.